But I have a question for you. This is a very deep question for you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is something funny if it doesn't incite a laugh? Let me back this up a little bit. So I believe that comedy is very ephemeral, meaning that a funny joke is not always funny. It's very situational. Mm-hmm. So you may laugh hysterically if you're in the audience at a stand-up routine, but if you were to just hear somebody tell you the same joke, even if it was the same comic, tell you the same joke where you're just sitting in a room looking at each other, and it's just one-on-one and he tells you the same joke, you may not laugh. So the idea of this ephemeralness of comedy, so does that mean that a joke is only funny if you laugh at it?
No, I don't think so, because you can acknowledge the humor of a joke without actually laughing at the joke.
But see, I feel like that's a false equivalency, I guess, because to me, something, what were we talking about before? Comedy, in one of our other discussions about comedy, how either it makes you laugh or it doesn't. Either it's funny or it isn't. There's no breaking down why. And I feel like it's easy to mistake understanding the logic of a joke versus actually finding it funny. Like you can understand, like, oh, I understand why that could be funny, but yet I'm not laughing at it. And so that's sort of the barrier I'm trying to break down here, is that even though you understand it, is it still funny?
Yes. Next question.
I disagree. I think that humor, or I shouldn't say humor because that's too broad a term. A joke being funny, I think you have to laugh at it. It has to be laughed at. And whether that's like if you were in stand-up in a group full of people and nobody laughs at it, your joke is not funny. And that
True.
That's impossible to find because people will give you the courtesy laugh more often than not. And of course, this is very academic, but it has to incite a laugh. Otherwise, it's not. Otherwise, it's just a poem or something that incites an intellectual response versus something that incites a physical response. Like something isn't scary unless you actually get scared, not because you understand why it could be scary or that it should be scary, but that you actually got scared.
No, I don't think that's true either, because you can talk about events like no, not ghost stories, but you can talk about events that you realize how terrifying the situation would be without you genuinely being terrified yourself.
Right, but you're not. But to you, because comedy, being scared, that's all subjective.
Right.
So, but to you, so in a pure environment where you have a joke teller and a joke receiver, and the joke teller tells a joke and you do not laugh, that joke is not funny in that moment. But if he were to tell, or she were to tell that in front of a group of people or another person and they laugh, then the joke is funny. So it's transcendent, I guess, or it can be either or.
Right.
At any given time. But a joke isn't always funny because you laughed at it at one point or because it was laughed at one point. It has to be laughed at in that moment for it to be considered funny. Like, for example, the people that we had talked about this earlier, where there are certain people who will find something funny and not laugh at it, but yet stoically exclaim. Can you stoically exclaim something? Maybe not. Stoically say. Proclaim. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Or more often than not, it's like, that's funny.
Right.
They'll kind of give it that kind of, I'm smiling while I'm saying it, but I'm not actually laughing because I didn't actually find it funny, but I'm signaling to you that I understand your joke and that it can be let into the joke arena, as it were, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. But no, I still disagree, because based on what you're saying, then if I hear a joke enough times that it no longer is funny to me, then that means that joke is no longer funny.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But I can still appreciate the joke for being funny, even though I know it's coming and I know what's going to happen. Like Emperor's New Groove was a perfect example of that. I enjoy that movie so much, but I'm not laughing at it anymore. It's because I know that the jokes are coming and I know that they're still funny and I'm still having a good time with it, but I'm not laughing anymore. That doesn't mean the movie's no longer funny.
See, I think that experience is a nostalgic experience rather than a physical experience, I guess you could call it. It's not a primal experience. I think laughter and humor in that sense is very primal because it's doing something in one part of our brain versus the other part of our brain. We're expecting it. And I think that the ability to watch something and appreciate the joke is different than laughing at it.
But I can still recall the joke and laugh at it at other times.
Yeah, in that moment it's funny. But you have to laugh at it. You cannot intellectually be like, "No, that's funny. I know that is funny." Like it's not, that doesn't count.
Yeah, nope. I disagree with this. Because you're trying to make jokes binary. They're either funny or they're not. And the same joke can either be funny or not, depending on whether or not you react to it.
Well, I mean, there are some jokes that are going to be funnier than other jokes, but it has to incite some level of physical response. So whether that's just a small, like, or a full-throated, gutted laughter. But it has to do something. Like you have to lose control of your body, at least temporarily. It can't be something, because you can always kind of tell when somebody's laughing to give you a courtesy laugh, or it's just a, that kind of thing.
Right. But I can also hear a joke that I've heard many times and enjoy it, but not hear the whole thing, and either A, start laughing at it, which means that part of the joke was funny, even though I didn't finish it, but the rest of the joke is not funny because I didn't need it. Or I can hear it and say, oh, is it this joke? Yeah, that joke is really funny. And I don't need to, because also what you're saying is that means I have to laugh at it when I tell it, because otherwise I'm not finding it funny.
That's a good question. I think the deliverer of the joke, it's still a memory. I mean, there are comics who still laugh at their own jokes.
But I think that's rehearsed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But I think that to the comic, especially somebody who has been doing the joke 1,900 times on tour or something, they probably think they know that it's funny from experience, but they aren't having a physical response to it when they tell it to a audience.
Right. So that means they don't find it funny.
No, they don't find it funny. In the same way that when you bake bread that tastes good from experience that you give to somebody without tasting it first, you're relying on that to say, like, this is good bread, I made it, even though you've never tasted it before. No?
No.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
But I think that, but you're right. I think that in order for a comic to tell a joke successfully, they can't really find it funny anymore. That's an interesting angle of this talk that we're having.
Right.
Where are we?
What day is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you have to laugh at it. You can't remember that it's funny. And now if you recall a joke, something I do all the time, if you recall a joke and laugh at it, it's still funny. You can still do that, but you can't just remember laughing at it and not laugh at it in the present and it still be funny.
See, I think what I take issue with is the fact that you're saying a joke is either, like, you're not, what I'm saying is a joke is either funny or it isn't. And, there are people who may find the joke funny and there are people who may not find the joke funny. But what you're saying is that single joke by itself can be funny or not funny to the same person based on whether or not they laugh at it.
Yes.
And I take issue with that.
Well, I think that it's just because it is so situational. It's not going to be funny. And I guess, boiled down, I don't think a joke, how can a joke be funny if you don't laugh at it?
Just because, well, you can be distracted by something. You could have heard that joke many, many times. Like, that doesn't make it no longer funny. That just means it's worn out for you. Okay, so I don't know what this phenomenon is called, but you do something over and over and over again, and it changes comedic states. So at the beginning, you're doing something over and over and over again, like even just if a person were to go on stage, sit in a chair, and smile at an audience. And it would be kind of, maybe perhaps it's a very goofy smile. For the first 30 seconds, first 30 seconds, it will not be funny. And then it will be kind of funny because it's kind of goofy. It's like, what's going on here? And then you just kind of I was like, this is kind of funny. Like, why is this guy just sitting here smiling at me? And then it goes down, right? Then you're like, okay, I'm kind of tired of this. And he keeps smiling. And all of a sudden, after another amount of time goes by, it's like, oh, it's getting kind of funny again, right? Mm-hmm. There's this wave of state of comedy. So in a sense, that is kind of illustrates what I'm trying to say, is that a joke can be funny over and over again. I just think that you have to be laughing at it. It's not as though it's either funny or not funny and that's it. And it's locked in that state. I think it's more fluid. But that's also not necessarily a joke. It's a presentation. Right. I mean, maybe that was a bad example just in terms of a joke being funny or not. But the Austin Powers peeing is what I'm thinking of for, like, yeah, exactly. What they call comedic torture. Yes.
But you keep laughing at it because you're like, especially in that scene, which I've just rewatched like a couple weeks ago. and it is very funny because he stops and then like, I don't know how many times he stopped. I think he stops once or twice and then he keeps going again. And then they find that place to cut and it's funny. But even that fluidity, like you're not going to laugh at the same part of that scene every single time. I think it's very situational in terms of your mood. So I don't think it's always going to be funny at the exact same moments.
Right. But, so you would then say that the peeing scene is funny. You wouldn't say, oh my gosh, do you remember the peeing scene at 23 seconds in? That was hilarious. Oh no, I didn't find that funny. But 27 seconds in, that's when I really started laughing. 23 seconds wasn't funny.
Right. But yes, if we were trying to talk about it with friends, we would reference it as the peeing scene and that it would be remembered as funny. But you wouldn't, if you were to recall back, you weren't laughing the whole time.
Right.
And I think that if you were to rewatch it again, you would not laugh at the same moments. Maybe you would, I don't know. But I feel like because it is so ephemeral and because it is so fluid, that comedy is not locked in a specific state. And so, therefore, to get it more basic, a joke can be retired or not, but it's not always thought of as funny because you have to laugh at it. I mean, it's something. It doesn't really translate to something being sad because you can think something is sad without crying, I guess. But I think laughter, you have to laugh at.
But you can't think something is funny without laughing at it?
Right, yeah. Or not laughing like out loud, that kind of thing. But at least it provoking a physical response of some kind, whether it's even just a smile. But that smile has to be provoked by the actual joke and not your memory of the joke. Because us having fond memories of something, of laughing very hard at something, I think that's different. It belongs in a separate category. Are you still a member of this podcast, or has this gone too far?
Well, I mean, they're the ones paying for it, so at this point, we'll know by how many canceled subscriptions we have. I still take issue with it because then, I mean, kind of what you're saying, what you just said still has to fall into the same category of sadness because you're remembering the moment of sadness. You're not living the sadness again. Therefore, when you are thinking about a sad moment, if you are not having a reaction to it, it is not sad.
It doesn't seem to apply to sadness for me, though. Like it doesn't. Sadness seems to be in a different category for some reason. And I guess this begs the question, which I think everybody showed up for, which is sadness the opposite of funny? Are they two extremes?
I think so. What else would it be?
Well, you could argue that happiness is the opposite of sadness. And happiness doesn't necessarily provoke a response. You can just be happy and content without smiling all day. You can just, So I think
but you can also be sad all day without crying.
Right. So that's maybe why, because those two things are opposite and funny is not an opposite of,
right.
So maybe crying is an opposite? No, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, because laughter goes with happiness.
Yeah, you can still laugh when you're happy. You can still laugh when you're happy, right? What happens? But you can still laugh when you're sad, too.
You cry when you're laughing?
Yeah, that's a different thing, though. But what is... Okay, if sadness is not the opposite of funny, what is the opposite of funny? Bored? Funny is not an emotion, though.
Right.
Happiness is an emotion. So
right.
Funny... What is funny? What is that? I guess laughing.
Right. So it's just an involuntary response.
Right. Involuntary response. What is the opposite of laughing? I guess it's crying. But is it crying, or is that just because we think of them?
I wouldn't say that crying is an involuntary response. I think that it's an intentional emotional release. I mean, when you're younger, you have less control over it. But when you get older...
Yeah, but you don't mean to cry. I think you let yourself cry, maybe?
Well, but you also don't mean to laugh. You go to an experience where you intend to laugh, but, the laughter itself is involuntary.
Right, but you said that crying isn't necessarily involuntary, and I think it can be. You can make yourself cry, or rather let yourself cry. I think it's easier to stifle a cry than it would be to stifle a laugh. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, and I don't think I'm going to agree with you. Like, I don't, and it sounds like I'm not going to change your mind. So
it's going to hit you, though. I mean, it's already brought around all of our other fans who are going to hear this.
Our Patreon count is doubled just on this. We now have 2.
2. All right. So I guess we didn't
settle
we
what we
didn't
need to
come down.
say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we haven't settled anything though.
No.
So part 2 to be continued.
Great.
I'll get you. I'll get you. You will come around. Guarantee it.
No, I can't agree with you that a joke when you don't laugh is not funny.
Well, then what is it?
If you have laughed at it at some point, it is funny.
It used to be funny.
No, it still is. Like,
Okay, so if you're a kid and you laugh at, I don't know, Bert from Mary Poppins playing his thing, you know, his like one-man band type of outfit,
which is funny.
and you laughed hysterically when you were, whatever, 7 years old or 5 years old, and you no longer laugh at it hysterically because it's really no longer funny. It's different. It's sort of evolved like you have because it's sort of amusing. I think you can be amused. Something can be amusing without a response, but I don't think it's funny anymore to you because you're not laughing at it.
No, I think if something was funny at one point, it is funny. You may no longer find it funny, but you have to say that it was funny or it is funny. You can't say like it's not funny because I'm not laughing.
But if you're not laughing at it, then why can you say that it's funny? Maybe it used to be funny. It was funny to me at one time, but it is no longer funny to me because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, but you can still find a joke funny without laughing.
How? What? Okay, what define funny?
Man, you define funny.
When somebody says something that makes you laugh.
See, no, I don't take that as the definition.
You reject that definition.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to define it. I'm sorry.
I know. No, that's fair. But yeah, no, we're gonna have to pause it until I can come up with a definition of funny, and then I'll come back to you with it. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To be continued.
Yeah, to be continued.
For the next time you don't hear this, everybody.